Hi, I'm Tom Gustafson, Computer Information Systems Instructor at Lake Superior College in Duluth, Minnesota. Welcome to this third video and final video in a series on using Windows 7 virtual hard disks. We first answered this question: what is a virtual hard disk? It's a file that acts like a disk. It can host native file systems, support standard disk operations, originally used in virtual server environments like Hyper-V, Virtual PC, and is also used in backup environments, but now it can be used from a Windows 7 computer. You can attach it like a regular disk and write to it, read from it. You can even boot from it, and that's what we're going to learn in this video, is how to boot from a virtual hard disk. We're using the Windows 7 Enterprise Edition, available at the URL on your screen, as well as the Windows Automated Installation Kit for the ImageX utility. And these are the steps we've been going through to create a virtual hard disk. First of all, we created a virtual hard disk using the DiskPart utility. Could also be done in Disk Management. We also use DiskPart to partition and format the virtual hard disk. Then we used the ImageX utility to apply an image to that virtual hard disk so it now contains an operating system. We didn't do this, but if you want, you can detach that virtual hard disk file from your system, copy it to a file share or a flash drive, and use it on other computers. And now in this final video, we're going to add a boot entry for the virtual hard drive so we can boot to Windows from that virtual hard disk. There are the steps for creating a virtual hard disk. We did it in DiskPart, and the steps for partitioning and formatting the virtual hard disk. We've already applied the image to our virtual hard disk. We just use the install.wim, the Windows image file that comes on the Windows 7 Enterprise installation media. That's an image of an installed Windows system, and we just applied that to our virtual hard drive, drive V. We didn't detach and copy the virtual hard drive, but we could have if we wished. And now it's time for us to configure our boot entries so that we can add one for the virtual hard drive. And in order to do this, we're going to use this utility called bcdedit, boot configuration data edit. And the first thing we're going to do is make a copy of our current boot configuration, which is the configuration that we have for the installed Windows 7 on our hard drive. And we're going to give it a descriptor myVHD. So we're just going to copy it. Then these next two commands right here are going to modify that boot configuration so that the boot and operating system devices are pointing to this virtual hard drive right here. One thing you'll notice about these two commands is the only difference is in the second one we have OS device instead of device. So here's what they're saying. bcdedit, we're going to set for the globally unique identifier for our new boot configuration that we've created. The device that we boot from is going to be myVHD.VHD, and the device that stores our operating system is going to be myVHD.VHD. This fourth bcdedit command right here with detect HAL, HAL is the hardware abstraction layer, is really not necessary unless we're moving this around from one computer to another with a different hardware abstraction layer. We're going to do this just to illustrate it. And this last bcdedit command with /v simply shows us our boot configuration data. In every example above here, GUID is the globally unique identifier of the new boot entry, and I'll show you how to find that and copy and paste it so we don't have to type the whole thing. So let's jump to our virtual machine and let's configure our boot configuration data. We're at the Administrator Deployment Tools command prompt here, and we can make things work from here if we want to. So let's give it a run. bcdedit all by itself will just show you your boot configuration data, and it's in the path, so we don't have to be in any specific directory to run it. And notice on a default Windows installation, bcdedit will give you two boot configurations. The first one is your boot manager partition. There is a small, usually 100 megabyte partition set aside for boot management, and then this C partition, that's our current boot configuration. That's where we've booted from. That is the current version of Windows installed on our physical hard disk that we booted to. And each of these boot configurations has a globally unique identifier which looks like this. It's in curly braces and it's this big long number. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to run bcdedit, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to copy the current boot configuration, and we're going to make this new configuration, which is a copy of the current boot configuration, and we're going to call it myVHD. So I'm going to press enter here, and it was successfully copied. And now when we do a BCD, and by the way, notice this big long globally unique identifier that was given to the new boot configuration. When I type bcdedit now, you'll notice that I now have 3 boot configurations listed. The first one, which was my boot manager, the second one that I'm currently booted from, and the third one now is the one that I named myVHD. You see it right there. But this one right now, this third one, is simply a copy of the one above it. But one thing that's different about it is this globally unique identifier right here. And it may look like it's the same as the one above it, but these first few digits here are different. Particularly the last 3 digits in this first set, 0D6, are different than what you see up above. Okay, so I've created a new boot configuration, and if you want to see this in the graphical interface, just to prove that it really did something, let's go to Computer here, and we'll go to Properties, which brings me to this System page. I'll go to Advanced System Settings, and I'm going to go down here to Startup and Recovery and click the Settings button. And here are my startup options, and notice now I have one called myVHD. That wasn't there before. I now have 2 boot options, but I'm not done yet configuring that boot option. I've got some work to do. So let's go on to step 2. The next thing I want to do is, for that boot option, I don't want to say it's booting to partition C. That's the physical C drive which has Windows 7 installed on it. Instead, I want to change that device setting. So I say bcdedit/set, and now I need the globally unique identifier of this current boot configuration, so I tell the bcdedit command which one I'm modifying. Or I shouldn't say the current boot configuration, but myVHD. Here's how you can do it. In the command prompt, there is a way to copy and paste. It's a little bit funny. You can do it by clicking up here in the upper left corner of the screen and going to these edit options right here. I prefer to just right click. So I'm going to right click here and choose Mark, and then I'm going to left click and drag across this globally unique identifier until it's selected the way I want it. You would naturally want to copy next, but there's no need for any copy option. Now all I have to do is right click and choose paste, and it pastes that globally unique identifier that I had marked up above. So now it's pasted into my command, and now I can say the device that I'm going to use is, or I'm changing the device setting, and it's going to be a virtual hard drive. And here's how I specify the virtual hard drive. The C colon in square brackets, VHDs, /myVHD.VHD. So I'm giving the path to that virtual hard drive. And the operation completed successfully. Now if I type bcdedit again, watch here, this very last entry, the device was partition equals C. Now the device is pointing to this virtual hard drive right here. I'm going to run the exact same command, except instead of device, I'm going to specify OS device, and notice that it's going to modify this entry right here, which says the operating system device is partition C. So that's my operating system device is my boot partition where the operating system is stored. And so that command worked fine. All I did was added OS in front of device. And if I run bcdedit again, now you'll notice that the OS device has been modified to point to the virtual hard drive. This next command isn't really necessary, but we're going to run it anyway. I'm going to paste in the global unique identifier, and I'm going to tell it to detect PAL and turn that on. This is if the virtual hard drive is moved to a different computer, it will try to detect the hardware abstraction layer if it's moved to a different system. And I'll run bcdedit again one more time, and you can give it a /v, which is for verbose. It gives you a little bit more information. You see things like this locate equals at the end of some lines, but pretty much the same information that we saw before, and that's what we want in our boot configuration data. So we have now modified our boot configuration so that it includes the virtual hard drive as an option in our boot options. Now what I can do is I can restart my system, and I should see that boot option, and if I select it, it will boot me up to Windows 7. Okay, I paused the video while the restart was taking place, and here I am now at the boot option. The boot menu. Windows 7 was my original installation. Here's the boot option for my virtual hard drive that we just configured. I will press enter to boot from that operating system, and it's now starting Windows. Let's go back here and make a couple last comments about testing things out. When you have two options that you're booting from, it's a good idea to change one so that you can clearly know which computer you've booted to. I was experimenting with this, and I didn't have the boot configuration right, and both menu items were booting to the same installation. And I didn't clearly see that at first until I changed the desktop background on one of them and booted and found that I was still always going to the same desktop background. So change your desktop background or something really distinctive so that you know which computer you've booted to. Then you can be more certain that things are actually working the way you think so. And so now we have this boot option called My VHD as an option. I will jump back to the virtual machine here, and this system is starting up. Now understand that this is a Windows image file that came right off the installation media. So this is a system that's going to start up, and it's going to run the out-of-box experience first time, because it's like a brand new fresh installation on a brand new computer. That's what that Windows image on the installation media is intended to do for us. I'm going to pause the video while this happens, because this startup does take a little bit because it's a first time startup. Okay, we have completed our startup, and Windows has now been booted to the virtual hard disk. If we go here to Computer and Manage, I'm going to open up Disk Management, and we're just going to take a look here at what disks we have on our system. And I'm also going to make a change to the desktop and reboot to the original Windows 7 system, just to show you that we are dealing here with two different systems. So we're connecting to the virtual disk service here, and it should come up in just a moment for us. Okay, it's up and running, and notice that the virtual hard drive is my C drive now, and I have booted to this virtual drive. It's my boot drive, which means it's the drive that has the operating system on it for this currently running system. My D drive is the 20 gig partition that was my original physical installation. So I'm booted and running off of my virtual hard drive. So we have now successfully created a virtual hard drive, imaged it, and booted from it. I hope these videos have been helpful for you, and that's all, folks.